So with the New World beta already here and the launch coming right around the corner, I thought I would take a look at the game, take a look at New World, and figure out what could Ashes learn from the development process of New World. And I've kind of whittled that list down to just 3 things, and here it is.
What you think about when you're born into a fight?
Number 3, opinions change in the blink of an eye. Just a few weeks ago, I seriously didn't know a single person with a positive view of New World. I'm sure there were plenty out there that did. I just didn't personally know any of them. I have friends that were part of the testing over the last year or 2, friends who watched other people test, and friends who were just casually aware of the game, and none of them had good things to say about the game. The opinions varied from it's absolute trash all the way up to, it might hold me over for a couple months. And then this most recent beta came out, and that narrative flipped overnight. All of a sudden, most of my friends were loving New World, praising it, talking about this game possibly bridging the gap all the way to the launch of Ashes. This is a lesson Steven and Intrepid should consider very carefully as they go forward. Opinions change, and they do so rapidly, and that pendulum swings both ways. What has been a highly successful alpha so far could be ruined with a disastrous Alpha 2 launch or Beta 1 and so on. But by that same token, regardless of how testing goes, if the final product that get released is amazing, people will come flooding back to the game. Number 2, combat. Now, before you freak out and tell me how bad combat is in New World, I pretty much agree with you. I don't think it's the worst combat I've ever seen, and at times it can be strategic and fun, but most of the time for me, it was just button mashing. So I don't suggest stealing New World combat whole cloth. But what they should do is take a look at New World's animation locking and compare it to what is currently in Ashes and see the difference. I know Ashes decided to go with this forward slide thing due to player feedback saying that combat felt floaty and not impactful. Now, I personally don't really agree with that, but I understand why people might say it. But I think they went way over the top with it. You'll notice here that New World also has the player slide forward with every swing of his weapon thing, but it's not by huge leaps and bounds. I actually had to log back into game in the middle of writing this because I wasn't sure if you slid forward while attacking or not. That's how subtle it is and how little it is noticed by the player. I'd personally prefer it if they got rid of the slide forward completely or made it contextual with button presses. Holding W would make you slide forward while attacking and so on, but holding no keys would leave you in the same spot. But if we have to leave the forward slide thing, handling it in the way New World has handled it is a great idea. Number 1, resource gathering. By far the most praised thing about New World has been its gathering. It's very much a survival game style gathering system where every single thing you see in the game can be gathered. Every tree can be chopped down, every rock can be mined, and every flower can be picked, and so on. In Ashes, at least in its current alpha state, you can chop down certain trees, but the ones standing right next to it that look exactly the same cannot be chopped. It's immersion breaking and nonsensical. Gathering resources in Ashes is such a chore. Running past hordes of trees looking for the one that the gods have blessed as a choppable tree, or worse, running circles around huge stone boulders looking for stone to mine. On the flip side, gathering in New World is borderline addicting. I can't tell you how many times I've set out with a specific objective in mind, saw an iron deposit or some hemp plants, and totally diverted off into a gathering fest, completely forgetting about the mission I originally set off to complete. It's definitely a more fun system for gathering, but how would it fit into Ashes? I've talked about this a few times on my channel and some other places, and the comments I get everywhere are pretty similar, noting that resource scarcity is a part of the player-driven economy in Ashes, so having tons of resources available everywhere doesn't really fit very well at all. And I actually don't disagree with all of that. Here's where I think, though, that it does fit in. To start off, having it so that I can chop every tree and mine every boulder is far more realistic and far less immersion breaking, which makes the world feel more like you're living in it rather than playing a game in it. Next up, those resources that are dropping from all the trees and boulders out there all over the place are tier 1. Even in New World, Tier 1 mats are abundant, but Tier 2 are much harder to get, and then much harder again for Tier 3, and so on. So the biggest trade-off for having the world feel more alive and realistic is that Tier 1 gear will be abundant. Gear that you will be done with inside of the first 15 levels, inside of your first 10 or 20 hours in game. That seems like a worthy trade-off to me. Now, with Ashes, Intrepid wants low-level resources to always matter, so it will take Tier 1 mats and Tier 2 resources to make process goods for Tier 2, for example. So adopting New World-style gathering would cause the resource gathering bottleneck to start at Tier 2 instead of Tier 1, which is another rather small trade-off in my opinion. But here's where things start getting interesting. New World Gathering, I think, really lends itself incredibly well to the caravan system and potentially the node leveling as well. Does it really matter if I can gather tons and tons and tons of low-level resources if I can't easily and safely transport them to where they need to be? Having Tier 1 mats be readily available, and especially having them be biome locked, meaning each biome has different Tier 1 trees, different Tier 1 flowers, etc., means there will be lots more caravans trying to crisscross the world of Vera. This adds lots more opportunities for would-be waylayers to perform their dirty deeds, or as Steven might put it, more opportunities for risk versus reward gameplay. Having an abundance of low-tier mats would also ease the pain of some of the early node leveling and constructing, and they could easily offset just how easy it is by forcing you to use a couple of Tier 2 mats, or even better, Tier 1 mats from a biome quite some large distance away, again, forcing more caravans out on the road. One last thing of note, in New World, when you go out gathering, you can just turn off your PvP flag and gather until your heart is content and no one is able to do a single thing about it. Obviously, in Ashes, you can't do that. The more fun and rewarding you make gathering, the more people will be out doing it, which in turn leads to more conflict out in the world of Vera, further reinforcing that risk versus reward gameplay. Whether you're talking about caravans, leveling up nodes, biome-locked resource deposits, or the multi-tiered crafting system, New World's Gathering fits right into Ashes of Creation, and I think it should be very strongly considered by Steven and the crew over at Intrepid. Guys, thank you so much for watching this video. Let me know down in the comments if you think I got this wrong, or let me know if you have some other idea of something that they should steal from New World. And that's really all I have for you guys today. Subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you guys in the next video.